She went to visit her sick son, but saw her millionaire husband's car. What she heard inside shattered her. A stunning woman in a designer coat stepped out into the rain. Tall, elegant, everything Denise felt she wasn't after 12-hour nursing shifts and single mother exhaustion. The woman moved with confidence, like she owned the space around her. Have you ever looked around your own home and felt like a stranger? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She held soup for her sick child while watching her husband kiss another woman through a hospital window. But the real shock wasn't the affair, it was whose arms were holding her son. The rain hammered Atlanta's streets like bullets on concrete. Denise clutched the paper bag containing chicken noodle soup, her 8-year-old's favorite, while her scrubs stuck to her back from rushing between her nursing shift and the children's hospital. The call had come during her break. Your son isn't feeling well. Can you come? Her heart had dropped. Marcus Jr. rarely got sick, but when she turned into the hospital parking lot, her steps froze mid-stride. A sleek black Bentley sat under the dim parking lot lights. The same car her millionaire husband Richard swore was parked in New York for his business trip. Have you ever felt that moment when your stomach drops and your brain refuses to process what your eyes are seeing? When everything familiar suddenly feels dangerous. Denise's hands trembled as she crept closer to the luxury vehicle. Through the rain-streaked window of a private hospital suite on the ground floor, she saw movement. Shadows dancing. Her husband's tall frame unmistakable even in silhouette. She pressed herself against the wet brick wall, soup growing cold in her grip. The voices drifted through a slightly cracked window. Don't worry, she'll never find out about us. Richard's deep voice, the same one that whispered sweet promises in her ear that very morning. Then, a woman's soft laugh. Musical, confident, a sound that didn't belong in Denise's world. What happens when the person you trust most becomes a stranger in your own life? When a man who promised to protect your heart is the one breaking it. Denise's knees buckled. She pressed her ear against the cold window frame, rain soaking through her uniform. Her mind screamed for answers while her heart begged for this to be some terrible mistake. I'm leaving her for you. The words hit like physical blows. Richard's voice carried a tenderness she hadn't heard from him in months, maybe years. The same gentle tone he'd used when proposing to her 5 years ago on that beach in Miami, when she believed fairy tales could come true for a girl from Birmingham. A spoon clattered to the floor inside the room. Someone was coming to the door. Denise stumbled backward, but her feet felt glued to the concrete. Her mind raced through fragments of memory. Richard's recent distance, the mysterious late-night phone calls, his sudden interest in Marcus Jr.'s school schedule. The door cracked open. A stunning woman in a designer coat stepped out into the rain. Tall, elegant, everything Denise felt she wasn't after 12-hour nursing shifts and single mother exhaustion. The woman moved with confidence, like she owned the space around her. But it was what she carried that made Denise's world tilt off its axis. The woman cradled Marcus Jr. against her chest. Her son, her baby, and he wasn't fighting the embrace. He looked comfortable, content, like this wasn't the first time he'd been held by these unfamiliar arms. If you've ever wondered how betrayal sounds, it's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's the absence of everything you thought you knew, replaced by a silence so complete it makes your ears ring. The woman's eyes swept the parking lot, but passed over Denise like she was invisible. When she looked down at Marcus Jr., her expression wasn't that of a stranger caring for a sick child. It was ownership, familiarity, love. This wasn't just an affair. This was a replacement. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if you discovered your family wasn't really yours? How do you process the moment when your entire life becomes a lie? As Denise backed away from the scene, her phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Emergency at the office, won't be home tonight. Take care of our boy. But their boy was already being taken care of by another woman's hands. She turned and ran toward her car, soup spilling from the forgotten bag. Behind her, through the rain-streaked window, she could see Richard emerging from a suite. He placed his hand on the woman's lower back, the same protective gesture he used to reserve for Denise. The woman turned, still holding Marcus Jr., and smiled. not with guilt or surprise, but with the confidence of someone who already owned what Denise thought belonged to her. Hit that notification bell because this story is just getting started, and what she discovers next will destroy everything she believes about love, family, and trust. The other woman wasn't just sleeping with her husband, she was raising her child, and somehow, the boy seemed happier in her arms. Denise sat in her car, engine running, windshield wipers fighting the rain. She should drive away, pretend she'd never seen what she couldn't unsee. Go home to their mansion in Buckhead and wait for Richard to return from his fictional New York trip. Instead, she killed the engine and crept back toward the hospital window. The private suite glowed with warm light, a stark contrast to the sterile hospital corridors she knew so well. Inside, her family looked complete, except she wasn't part of it. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Like you were watching someone else live the story you thought was yours? The woman had settled into a leather chair, Marcus Jr. curled against her side. She wasn't just holding him, she was reading to him, from a book Denise had never seen, in a voice that carried the practiced rhythm of someone who'd done this before. Many times, Richard sat on the arm of the chair, his hand stroking the woman's dark hair. The same gesture he'd once reserved for Denise during their passionate early days, when love felt infinite and promises seemed unbreakable. Now, those intimate touches belong to someone else. Does your tummy feel better, sweetheart? The woman's voice carried through the window. Marcus Jr. nodded against her shoulder. Can you stay until I fall asleep? Mama V? Mama V. The nickname hit Denise like a medical diagnosis, sudden, devastating, and impossible to ignore. Her son had given this stranger a name, a role, a place in his heart that should have belonged only to his real mother. But watching them together, Denise saw something that broke her more than the affair itself. Marcus Jr. looked peaceful, relaxed in a way she hadn't seen in months. When was the last time her son had curled against her like that? When had she become too tired, too stressed, too focused on surviving to simply hold him? What happens when you realize the person replacing you might actually be better at being you? Richard leaned down and kissed the woman's forehead. You're amazing with him, Victoria. Victoria. Even her name sounded elegant. Everything Denise wasn't after years of double shifts and single mother exhaustion before Richard came into their lives. He's easy to love, Victoria replied, running her fingers through Marcus Jr.'s hair. Smart, funny, sensitive, just like his father. Father, not stepfather. Father. Denise watched her husband become the man she'd fallen in love with. Gentle, attentive, present, just with someone else. In the early days of their marriage, Richard had been this way with her. Before the business consumed him, before the distance crept in, before she'd started feeling like an employee in her own home rather than a wife. The doctor says he can go home tomorrow, Victoria continued. Should I pick him up, or will you? You handle it, Richard said. You know his routine better than anyone. Better than his mother, he meant. Better than Denise, who worked 3 12-hour shifts a week to contribute to their household. Even though Richard's wealth made her income unnecessary, she wanted to maintain her independence, her identity. Now, she wondered if that choice had cost her everything that mattered. Drop a heart in the comments if you've ever felt like you were failing at the most important job in the world, being someone's parent. Victoria began humming a lullaby, not one Denise recognized. A new song for a new life being built without her knowledge. Marcus Jr.'s eyes fluttered closed, his breathing settling into sleep rhythm. We should tell him soon, Victoria whispered to Richard. Tell him what? Richard's voice dropped lower. About us. About the future. About the fact that things are going to change. Change. The word hung in the air like a threat. What kind of change? How long had they been planning this? How long had Denise been living in a marriage that existed only in her mind? Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled, probably reading the text he'd sent to Denise about his fake emergency. The lie came so easily to him, so naturally, that she realized this wasn't new. This was practiced, perfected. I should go, he said to Victoria. Keep up appearances for a little longer. Appearances. That's all their marriage was now. A performance Richard maintained while building a real life with someone else. Victoria nodded, still holding the sleeping child. Drive safe. Text me when you get home. Home, to the mansion he shared with Denise. But this hospital room, with this other woman and her son, felt more like home to him than anything they'd built together. As Richard gathered his coat, Victoria looked up at him with eyes that held everything Denise had lost: trust, admiration, love. When was the last time she'd looked at her husband that way? When had she stopped being his partner and become just another obligation to manage? If you've ever wondered what it looks like when someone falls out of love with you, it's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's being replaced by someone who gives them what you can't, or what you've stopped trying to give. Richard kissed Victoria Woodville. Not a casual peck, but a deep, lingering kiss that spoke of shared secrets and future plans. The kind of kiss that creates promises rather than breaking them. As Denise backed away from the window, her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Emergency at the office resolved. Won't be home tonight, after all. Take care of our boy. But their boy was already being tucked into a hospital bed by another woman's hands. And tomorrow, he'd go home to a life Denise knew nothing about. She stumbled toward her car, rain mixing with tears she hadn't realized she was crying. Behind her, the warm light of the hospital suite continued to glow, a perfect family portrait that didn't include her. This story gets more shocking, so make sure you're subscribed, because what she discovers next will prove that some betrayals go deeper than anyone imagines. She went home to an empty mansion and discovered evidence that her marriage had been a performance, and she wasn't even the lead actress. The Buckhead mansion felt like a museum after midnight. Marble floors that had once impressed her now echoed with emptiness. Crystal chandeliers cast shadows that seemed to mock her as she moved through rooms filled with expensive furniture and hollow memories. Denise stood dripping in their grand foyer, still wearing rain-soaked scrubs, staring at wedding photos that suddenly looked like evidence of fraud. Had Richard ever loved her? Or had she been convenient? A single mother grateful enough to accept whatever version of love he chose to offer. Have you ever looked around your own home and felt like a stranger? Like you were trespassing in a life that was never really yours? She climbed the curved staircase to their master bedroom. Egyptian cotton sheets, Italian leather chairs, a walk-in closet bigger than her first apartment. All of it felt foreign now, like a movie set designed to look like happiness. But it was Richard's home office that held the truth. The mahogany desk sat locked as always. But tonight, Denise's nursing training kicked in. The same observational skills that help her spot changes in patient conditions. She noticed what she'd overlooked for months. A slight scratch around the lock. Recent. Fresh. Her trembling hands found Richard's spare key taped onto the desk drawer, exactly where he'd always kept it, thinking she'd never look. What do you do when you discover that the person you trusted most has been living a double life? Do you walk away from the truth, or do you dive deeper into the lies? The desk drawers slid open like confessional booths, revealing sins she'd never imagined. Bank statements, dozens of them. Accounts she'd never known existed. Regular transfers to someone named Victoria Matthews. Amounts that could have paid off her nursing school loans 10 times over. Money that flowed like a river toward a life he was building without her. Her hands shook as she spread the papers across their bed. The dates went back 2 years. 2 years of systematic deception, of building a parallel existence while kissing her goodnight and promising her forever. But the financial records were nothing compared to what she found next. A manila envelope marked personal. Inside, photographs that stole her breath. Richard and Victoria at the beach. The same beach where he'd proposed to Denise. Except this time he was kissing someone else under the same sunset that had once felt magical. Pictures of them at restaurants she'd never been to, wearing clothes she'd never seen, living moments that should have belonged to his wife. And there, in the bottom of the envelope, photos of Marcus Jr. birthday parties she'd never attended. Baseball games she'd never watched. School events where Victoria sat in the seat marked for mother. How long had this been happening? How many times had Richard claimed to be traveling for business while actually playing house with his replacement family? The love letters made everything worse. Victoria, what we have is real. The rest is just obligation. Soon, Everything will be different. I promise. Obligation. 5 years of marriage reduced to a single word. All the nights she'd waited up for him, all the family dinners she'd cooked alone, all the time she defended his absence to Marcus Jr. It had all been obligation. Tell me in the comments, what hurts more? Discovering someone cheated or learning they never loved you in the first place? But it was the lingerie that broke her heart completely. Expensive sets in her exact size, tags still attached, hidden in the back of Richard's closet. Beautiful, intimate pieces she'd never seen. He'd been buying gifts for both of them, his wife and his lover, like he was maintaining two different versions of the same relationship. She held up a red silk set, imagining Victoria wearing something identical. Two women, same size, same role, same man. Interchangeable parts in Richard's elaborate lie. The bedroom walls seemed to close in as the truth settled over her like a shroud. Their bed, where they'd made love just that morning, suddenly felt contaminated. How many nights had Richard laid beside her, thinking about Victoria? How many times had he whispered, "I love you," while his heart belonged to someone else? Her phone buzzed. Another text from Richard, "Thinking of you. Missing you already." The same message he'd probably sent to Victoria an hour earlier. The same words, the same fake emotion, distributed like mass-produced affection to the women in his life. Have you ever realized that everything you thought was special about your relationship was actually a script? That the person you loved was just playing a role? Denise sank onto the bed, surrounded by evidence of her husband's betrayal. Credit card statements showed charges at fertility clinics, but she'd never been to a fertility clinic. They tried to conceive for 2 years before accepting it might not happen. Now she wondered if Richard had been trying to create a baby with Victoria while pretending to want one with her. The final envelope contained legal documents, preliminary divorce papers, already drafted, property division, custody arrangements, financial settlements, all worked out in detail, just waiting for his signature and her devastation. But there was one line that made her blood freeze. Primary custody of minor child to be transferred to Richard Matthews and Victoria Matthews upon completion of proceedings. Victoria Matthews. She already had his last name in legal documents, already had his child's affection, already had his love, his time, his future. What she didn't have yet was his wife's complete destruction. Share this video if you've ever discovered that your entire life was someone else's backup plan, because what she found next would prove that some betrayals are carefully planned years in advance. The credit card statement showed a charge that made her legs give out completely. Fertility treatments for Victoria Matthews, dated 3 months ago. Her husband wasn't just having an affair, he was building a replacement family, complete with the children Denise thought they couldn't have together. And based on the medical dates, Victoria might already be pregnant with the baby Denise had been told was impossible. The appointment she never made was scheduled in her name, but the woman sitting in the waiting room wasn't her. It was the one carrying her husband's future. Morning came without sleep. Denise sat at her kitchen island, still wearing yesterday's scrubs, staring at the fertility clinic address circled in red on Richard's credit card statement. Atlanta Reproductive Health Center. Multiple charges over the past 6 months, all during times Richard claimed to be traveling for business. She called in sick to the hospital, the first time in 3 years. Her supervisor's concerned voice felt distant, like it was coming from another planet where people worried about normal things like shift coverage and patient care. Have you ever had a day when your old life ended and your new one hadn't started yet? When you existed in the space between who you were and who you'd become? The fertility clinic sat in Midtown's medical district, all glass and steel and promises of new beginnings. The kind of place where hope came with a price tag and miracles required insurance authorization. Denise parked across the street, hands gripping the steering wheel. Inside that building were answers she wasn't sure she wanted. But the alternative, living in ignorance while someone else stole her future, felt worse than the truth. The receptionist looked up with practiced sympathy as Denise approached the front desk. Young, blonde, probably used to dealing with desperate women clinging to the possibility of motherhood. "I need to check on some appointments," Denise said, her nurse's voice automatically shifting into professional mode. For Denise Matthews. The girl's fingers clicked across the keyboard. I'm sorry, Mrs. Matthews, but we don't have any appointments scheduled for you. Are you sure you have the right clinic? Check the billing records, Denise pressed. There should be charges to my insurance. More clicking, then a frown. Oh, I see the confusion. The charges are under your insurance, but the appointments are for Victoria Matthews. Are you related? The words hit like a medical punch to the gut. Victoria was using her insurance, living under her benefits while stealing her husband and son. Identity theft layered on top of emotional theft. Victoria is my stepdaughter, Denise lied smoothly. I handle her medical arrangements. What would you do if you discovered someone was literally living your life while you weren't looking? Of course, the receptionist smiled. Victoria has been such a dedicated patient. Dr. Harrison is very optimistic about this cycle. Would you like to review her file? The manila folder slid across the desk like evidence in a trial. Inside, Denise found medical records that rewrote everything she thought she knew about her own body, her marriage, and her husband's lies. Victoria's fertility testing showed perfect reproductive health. No issues, no complications, nothing preventing a natural pregnancy. But Richard's file told a different story. Vasectomy reversal, performed 18 months ago. The same time period when Denise had been begging Richard to see a fertility specialist, when she blamed herself for their inability to conceive, when she cried herself to sleep wondering what was wrong with her body. There had never been anything wrong with her. Richard had been sterile by choice during their entire marriage. While she'd endured invasive testing and hormone treatments, while she questioned her worth as a woman, he'd known exactly why she couldn't get pregnant. Because he made sure she couldn't. The reversal was very successful. The receptionist continued, oblivious to the devastation she was casually delivering. Dr. Harrison says Victoria's pregnancy should progress normally. Pregnancy. The word hung in the air like a death sentence for Denise's marriage. How far along is she? Denise managed to ask. 12 weeks as of her last visit. She's due in late spring. Such exciting news. 12 weeks pregnant while Denise had been cooking family dinners and planning their anniversary trip. 12 weeks of carrying Richard's child while Denise worked extra shifts to contribute to a household that was already planning to exclude her. Have you ever learned that your struggles were manufactured by the person who promised to support you? That your pain was someone else's convenience? There is one concern, the receptionist added, pulling out another file. The insurance fraud investigation. Denise's blood froze. Investigation. Someone reported suspicious activity on your account. Multiple claims for treatments you never received, appointments you never scheduled. The insurance company is looking into it. So someone else had discovered Victoria's identity theft. Someone else had noticed that Denise Matthews was apparently getting fertility treatments while working full-time nursing shifts across town. Who reported it? Denise asked. The receptionist glanced around, then leaned closer. Another patient recognized Victoria from somewhere else. Said she knew for certain that Victoria Matthews wasn't married to Richard Matthews because... She paused dramatically. Because she knew Richard Matthews was already married to someone else. The clinic's soft music and pastel walls suddenly felt like a crime scene. Someone had been watching Richard's double life. Someone had evidence. Someone might be willing to help her prove what she was only beginning to understand. Do you have contact information for the person who reported it? I really shouldn't. The receptionist looked around again. But between you and me, it was another wife. Someone who's been through this before. She left her number in case the real Mrs. Matthews ever needed it. The piece of paper contained a phone number and a name, Sarah Chen. Below it, a handwritten note. He's done this before. Call me. Drop a broken heart in the comments if you've ever discovered that your personal nightmare was someone else's pattern. As Denise left the clinic, Victoria was entering through the main door. 12 weeks pregnant, glowing with the kind of joy Denise had dreamed of experiencing. Victoria's hand rested protectively on her still flat stomach as she walked toward the elevator, toward the appointment where she'd hear her baby's heartbeat for the first time. Richard's baby, the child Denise had been told was impossible. The future she'd been excluded from while helping to pay for it with her own insurance. But it was the folder tucked under Victoria's arm that made Denise's legs nearly give out. Adoption papers for Marcus Jr., pre-signed by Richard, dated for next month. Her husband wasn't just leaving her for another woman. He was legally erasing her from their child's life, one forged signature at a time. Make sure you're subscribed, because what she discovers next will prove that some betrayals are planned years in advance. And the woman stealing her life has been doing this to other families long before Denise ever said "I do." Her husband wasn't just leaving her for another woman. He was legally erasing her from their child's life, one forged signature at a time. The coffee shop across from the fertility clinic buzzed with afternoon energy, but Denise sat frozen in a corner booth, staring at the phone number Sarah Chun had left. Around her, people lived normal lives, ordering lattes, checking emails, complaining about traffic. None of them were discovering that their entire existence had been built on lies. She dialed the number with trembling fingers. Sarah Chun. The voice was crisp, professional, tinged with an accent that suggested intelligence and experience. "This is Denise Matthews. You left your number at the fertility clinic. About my husband." A long pause. Then, "Richard Matthews?" "Yes. I've been waiting for your call. We need to meet. Tonight. There are things you need to know before it's too late." Have you ever met someone who knew more about your life than you did? Someone who could see the trap you were walking into while you were still believing in happily ever after? They met at a 24-hour diner in Virginia Highland, the kind of place where fluorescent lights revealed too much truth and coffee came with unlimited refills of regret. Sarah Chun looked exactly like what Denise had expected. Elegant, intelligent, wounded in a way that time hadn't quite healed. "You're his third wife," Sarah said without preamble, sliding a thick manila envelope across the Formica table. "I was his second. The woman before me was his first. Third wife." The words rewrote Denise's entire understanding of her marriage. She'd thought she was special, chosen, rescued from single motherhood by a man who loved her enough to take on another man's child. Instead, she was just the latest in a pattern. "He's done this exact same thing before," Sarah continued. "Married woman with a child from previous relationship, moved them into his world, made them financially dependent, then replaced them systematically while maintaining legal custody of the children." The envelope contained photographs, documents, legal records. 3 women, 3 families, 3 systematic destructions. All orchestrated by the man who'd promised Denise forever just 5 years ago. "Victoria isn't just the other woman," Sarah explained. "She's his employee, has been for 4 years. This is her job, breaking up his marriages, maintaining plausible deniability, helping him transfer assets and custody while the wives are still believing in love." Employee. Victoria was being paid to steal Denise's life. What do you do when you realize your husband's affair was actually a business arrangement? When a woman you thought was stealing your man was just following orders? "Look at page 15, Sarah said quietly. The document made Denise's vision blur. A contract between Richard Matthews and Victoria Matthews, dated 2 years ago. Payment schedule for relationship maintenance and child integration services. Bonus payments for successful fertility procedures and custody transition completion. Victoria was earning money for every kiss, every moment of tenderness, every night spent in Richard's arms. She was being paid to love him while Denise did it for free." "The adoption papers you saw," Sarah continued, "they're not just for your son. Richard legally adopted my daughter before divorcing me. Then he kept her. She hasn't seen me in 3 years." The coffee in Denise's mouth turned to acid. Marcus Jr. wasn't just at risk of losing his mother. He was following a path that had already destroyed other families. "How is this legal?" Denise whispered. "It's not. But Richard has connections, judges, social workers, lawyers. He makes it look legitimate. Concerned stepfather protecting children from unstable biological mothers. The courts see a wealthy man offering stability versus a working woman facing divorce trauma." Sarah pulled out her phone, showing Denise a picture of a little girl with dark hair and serious eyes. Emma was 7 when Richard started the process. She loved him, trusted him. Now she calls Victoria mom and probably doesn't remember my name. The systematic nature of it was breathtaking. Richard didn't just collect wives. He collected their children, built himself a family by stealing pieces from other people's lives, then discarded the original mothers when they were no longer useful. Share this with anyone who needs to know that some predators don't look like monsters. They look like successful businessmen offering security to vulnerable women. There's more, Sarah said, sliding another document across the table. The fertility clinic fraud? That's how he funds the operation. He uses the wives' insurance for Victoria's treatments, then bills the costs back to shell companies he owns. It's money laundering disguised as reproductive medicine. Every piece of evidence painted the same picture. Richard Matthews wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a criminal who specialized in emotional and financial destruction, using love as a weapon and trust as a tool. Why didn't you stop him? Denise asked. Why didn't you warn me? Sarah's smile was bitter. I tried. I contacted his first wife, tried to warn her about the second. Nobody believed me. Who's going to believe that a respected businessman is systematically destroying families for profit? It sounds insane, but now there are 3 of us. 3 victims who can corroborate the pattern. 3 sets of evidence. 3 voices he can't silence. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Denise processed the magnitude of Richard's deception. This wasn't about love gone wrong or passion overriding judgment. This was calculated destruction, repeated and refined over years. There's something else, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Victoria is pregnant, but it might not be Richard's baby. What happens when you discover that even the affair was a lie? When a betrayal has layers you never imagined? She's been working this con for years. Part of her job is maintaining relationships with multiple targets simultaneously. The fertility clinic has records of her seeing other men, other husbands she's been paid to seduce. Denise's mind reeled. Victoria might be carrying some other woman's husband's child while pretending it was Richard's. Another layer of deception in a con game that seemed to have no bottom. We have 48 hours, Sarah continued. My source at the courthouse says Richard filed the adoption papers yesterday. Once they're processed, getting them reversed becomes nearly impossible. 48 hours to save her son from disappearing into Richard's collection of stolen children. 48 hours to prove that her entire marriage had been a criminal enterprise disguised as love. If you've ever felt like time was running out on everything that mattered, you know what happened next. Because sometimes the only way to save your family is to destroy the man who promised to protect it. As Sarah handed her a business card for a private investigator, Denise's phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. Stop digging or you'll lose more than just your husband. Some secrets are worth killing to protect. Comment below if you think she should have walked away or fought back, because this story is about to prove that some battles are worth risking everything to win. She agreed to meet her replacement face to face, expecting to find a homewrecker. Instead, she discovered a woman who knew secrets about her own life that she'd never shared with anyone. The upscale restaurant in Buckhead felt like enemy territory. Crystal glasses and soft lighting created the perfect backdrop for civilized warfare. Denise sat across from Victoria Matthews. Yes, Matthews. She'd already taken the name, studying the woman who'd stolen her husband and nearly her child. Victoria was everything Denise wasn't. Polished, confident. The kind of woman who belonged in Richard's world of charity galas and country club dinners. Her diamond earrings caught the light as she stirred her wine, completely at ease. Thank you for coming, Victoria said, her voice honey over steel. I know this must be difficult. Have you ever sat across from someone who destroyed your life and had them thank you for showing up? The audacity was breathtaking. Your son calls me Mama now, Victoria continued, watching Denise's face for a reaction. Children adapt so quickly when they feel truly wanted. The words hit like a physical blow. Denise's hands trembled around her water glass. His name is Marcus Jr., and he has a mother. Of course he does. Victoria's smile never wavered. But mothers come in many forms, don't they? Some give birth. Others give love. Some provide stability. The implication hung heavy between them. Denise, the working mother juggling hospital shifts, versus Victoria, the stay-at-home replacement with unlimited time and resources. "Richard told me about your miscarriage," Victoria said softly. "3 years ago, you never told anyone except him. The guilt you carry thinking it was your fault." Denise's blood turned to ice. That secret, that private pain she'd shared only in their bedroom during a moment of vulnerable intimacy, was now common knowledge between her husband and his mistress. He also mentioned how you cry sometimes after you're together. How you turn away so he won't see. The restaurant's background jazz couldn't drown out the roaring in Denise's ears. These weren't just affairs of the body. They were violations of the soul. Richard had shared her most private moments, her deepest fears, her intimate responses. "What do you want?" Denise managed. Victoria slid a manila envelope across the table. "Richard's being generous. Divorce settlement. $5 million. Full financial security for life." Denise stared at the envelope without touching it. "And complete surrender of parental rights to Marcus Jr. clean break. You walk away, and everyone gets what they want. Everyone except my son. Your son will have 2 parents who love each other. A stable home. Private schools. College funds. Everything you're working yourself to death trying to provide." The logic was seductive. Wasn't this what she'd always wanted from Marcus Jr.? Security? Opportunity? A father who came home every night instead of disappearing on mysterious business trips? But the price. Victoria leaned forward, her perfume expensive and cloying. "You know what Richard told me about you? He said you're tired. Bone deep exhausted from trying to be everything to everyone. He sees how you struggle." The words cut because they held truth. Denise was tired. 12-hour hospital shifts followed by helping with homework, making dinner, being present for every school event, every scraped knee, every nightmare. "He said you deserve rest," Victoria continued. "Freedom, the chance to live for yourself instead of everyone else." For a moment, just a moment, the offer tempted her. $5 million. No more double shifts. No more choosing between her son's needs and her patients' lives. No more falling asleep during bedtime stories because she'd been on her feet for 14 hours. Then she remembered Marcus Jr.'s face when he'd hugged her that morning. "Mama, you smell like that soap from work, but I like it because it means you're helping people." "This offer expires at midnight," Victoria said, checking her expensive watch. "Richard's patience has limits." "So does mine," Denise replied, standing up. "Tell my husband," "Excuse me, your husband, that some things aren't for sale." Victoria's mask slipped for just a second, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "You're making a mistake, Denise. Richard gets what he wants. He always has. The easy way is better for everyone, especially for you. I'm trying to be kind here, but if you force this to get ugly..." "It's already ugly," Denise said. "You just put makeup on it." As she walked toward the restaurant exit, Victoria called out loud enough for other diners to hear. "Think about what's best for Marcus Jr., Denise. Think about what kind of life you can really give him." The words followed her into the Atlanta evening. But as she sat in her car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, one thought burned clear. Her son didn't need perfect. He needed real, and she was the most real thing in his life. Her phone buzzed. Text from Richard. "Victoria says you need time to think. You have until midnight. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. 11 hours to save her family." But first, she needed help from someone who understood that some fights were worth losing everything for. Share your thoughts below. Have you ever had to choose between easy and right? Hit that notification bell because this decision changes everything. With 11 hours until midnight, she had to choose. Accept millions and lose her son forever, or fight a battle where the deck was already stacked against her. The law offices of downtown Atlanta all gave her the same message. Richard Matthews was a prominent businessman. His donations to local campaigns, his charity work, his standing in the community, all of it created a wall of protection around him that her nurse's salary couldn't breach. Mrs. Matthews, the fourth lawyer, told her, "Your husband's reputation precedes him. Any custody battle would be challenging. Code word for impossible. She sat in her car outside the last law firm on her list, watching business people in expensive suits walk past. This was Richard's world. These were his people. She was an outsider trying to play a game where she didn't know the rules. 10 hours and 37 minutes left. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Matthews? This is Jake Morrison. I'm a private investigator. I think we need to talk. 20 minutes later, she sat across from Jake in a downtown diner that served coffee strong enough to wake the dead. He was nothing like the private investigators on TV. No trench coat or mysterious demeanor. Just a regular guy in jeans and a button-down shirt, with eyes that missed nothing. "How did you find me?" she asked. "I've been watching your husband for 3 months, Jake said. Federal investigation into his business practices. Money laundering through his real estate deals. Denise's world tilted again. Federal investigation? Richard's been using his properties to clean dirty money. Cash purchases, quick flips, prices that don't match market value. The kind of patterns that make federal agents very interested. Jake slid a folder across the table. "But that's not why I called you. I called because of this." Inside were photographs. Richard and Victoria at various locations around Atlanta. But also bank records, payment receipts, and something that made Denise's stomach drop. Documentation of bribes paid to social workers, court clerks, and family court judges. "Your husband's been planning this custody grab for over a year," Jake explained. "Payments to create a paper trail showing you as an unfit mother. Fake psychological evaluations. Forged medical records claiming drug use. That's impossible. I don't use drugs. I know. But the paperwork says different. Hair follicle tests that were never taken. Blood work from samples you never gave. All of it designed to make you look unstable while he looks like the responsible parent protecting his child." The diner's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Denise processed this information. "Why are you helping me?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "I have a daughter. Had. My ex-wife disappeared with her 2 years ago. Used false allegations and corrupt lawyers to make it happen. System failed me the same way it's failing you." Something in his voice told her this wasn't just professional interest. This was personal. "What can you do?" she asked. "Right now? Not much. But if you're willing to trust me, we can build a case. Real evidence. Real crimes. Federal charges that even Richard's money can't buy his way out of." "How long will that take?" Jake checked his watch. Longer than 9 hours and 43 minutes. The deadline pressed down on her like a weight. Take the money and run, or fight and risk losing everything, including the chance to stay in Marcus Jr.'s life at all. "There's something else," Jake said. "Your son isn't at the private hospital anymore. Victoria checked him out this morning. They're at Richard's lake house in North Georgia. Is he okay?" "As far as I can tell. But they're keeping him isolated. No school, no contact with his friends. Getting him used to a new normal before the custody hearing that Richard's already scheduled." "He's scheduled a custody hearing?" "For next week. Expedited processing courtesy of Judge Williams, who, according to these bank records, received a very generous donation to his re-election campaign last month. The corruption ran deeper than she'd imagined. But Jake's presence gave her something she hadn't had before. Hope. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Everything. Bank statements, phone records, anything that shows Richard's deception. And we need to move fast. Federal agents are closing in on his money laundering operation. When they arrest him, he'll know someone's been gathering evidence. Will that help with custody? A father in federal prison for financial crimes? It won't hurt." Denise felt the first spark of real hope in weeks. "How do we start?" Jake smiled, and she noticed how it changed his whole face. Professional competence mixed with something warmer. "We start by getting your son back. Then we worry about everything else." Her phone buzzed. Text from Richard, 8 hours left. "Don't make me take other measures. Think about Marcus Jr.'s future." Other measures. The threat was clear. But as she looked at Jake across the diner table, surrounded by evidence of her husband's crimes, she realized something. She wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in months, someone was fighting beside her instead of against her. "Let's do it," she said. Jake's eyes lit up with determination that matched her own. "Then let's go get your boy back." Have you ever found help in the most unexpected place? Sometimes the people meant to save us show up, right when we need them most. Comment below if you believe in perfect timing. She crashed through the mansion's front door at 11:58 p.m. to find her son's room empty, a note on his pillow, and the sound of a car engine fading into the Atlanta night. The security system Richard had installed to protect his family had been turned against her. Every door she'd opened 1,000 times now felt like trespassing. But desperation makes rebels of mothers. Jake followed close behind, his flashlight cutting through the darkness of what used to be her home. Check the master bedroom. I'll take the office. Denise's hands shook as she climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Marcus Jr.'s bedroom door stood open, moonlight streaming across his empty bed. The dinosaur sheets she'd bought him for his birthday were gone. His favorite stuffed elephant missing. Even his drawings from the refrigerator had been removed. The note on his pillow was written in Victoria's elegant handwriting. He's safe. He's happy. Let him stay that way. Denise. Jake's voice carried urgency. Get down here. Now. She found him in Richard's office, laptop open, bank statements scattered across the desk. They moved him 20 minutes ago. I've been tracking Richard's phone. Where? North toward Lake Lanier. But that's not the worst part. Jake's face was grim. Richard just transferred $5 million to an offshore account. He's running. The full scope of the betrayal hit her. This was never about custody or even Victoria. This was about Richard covering his tracks before federal agents closed in. Marcus Jr. was collateral damage in a much larger crime. We have to stop them, Denise said. Already on it. Jake was typing rapidly on his phone. Federal agents are en route to the lake house. But Richard has a head start, and he knows those mountain roads better than anyone. They raced through Atlanta's late-night traffic, Jake's SUV cutting between cars while Denise tracked Richard's location on the federal app Jake had given her access to. The city lights blurred past, but all she could think about was her son, confused and scared, caught between adults whose games he didn't understand. Talk to me about the lake house, Jake said, taking a sharp turn toward Highway 400. Richard bought it 2 years ago. Said it was for family vacations, but we only went once. Marcus Jr. was afraid of the water. Security? Private road. Gated entrance. He bragged about how isolated it was. Perfect place to hide a kidnapped child while arranging international escape routes. Jake's phone rang through the car speakers. Morrison, this is Agent Sarah Chun, FBI. We're 15 minutes out from the lake house. Status on the family? Mother's with me, pursuing. Father's running with the child. Financial crimes evidence suggests immediate flight risk. Copy that. We have roadblocks set up on all major routes out of the area. But Morrison, these mountain roads have a dozen back exits. If he knows the area, he does, Denise interrupted. Richard grew up in North Georgia. His family had a cabin up there. Agent Chin's voice turned sharp. We need that location. Now. Denise closed her eyes, tried to remember conversations from their early dating days. Somewhere near Helen, his grandfather's old hunting cabin. Richard said he'd inherit it someday. Morrison, can you? Already running property searches, Jake said, one hand on the wheel while he worked his phone with the other. Got it. County records show a Matthews family trust owns 40 acres near Unicoi State Park. They were racing against time and geography now. Mountain roads that could hide a fleeing criminal or trap federal agents in endless dead ends. Jake's SUV climbed into the foothills, headlights cutting through darkness that seemed to swallow sound. No other traffic, no cell towers, just the kind of isolation that made people disappear. There, Denise pointed to brake lights ahead. That's Richard's Bentley. But as they got closer, they realized the car was empty, doors open, keys still in the ignition. Jake got out first, weapon drawn, training taking over. Stay in the car. That's my son out there. That's exactly why you stay in the car. If something happens to you, who fights for him? The logic was sound, but felt wrong. Every mother's instinct screamed at her to run into the woods, calling Marcus Jr.'s name until she found him. Jake's flashlight beam swept the abandoned car. Phone's still here. Wallet. But look at this. He showed her muddy footprints leading away from the road. 3 sets. Adult male, adult female child. They're on foot, heading toward the cabin. Maybe Richard's backup plan got compromised. In the distance, they heard it, a child's voice calling for help. Denise was out of the SUV before Jake could stop her, running toward the sound of her son's fear. Branches tore at her clothes as she crashed through underbrush, following the voice that had called her mama for 8 years. She found them in a clearing near the old hunting cabin, Richard holding Marcus Jr.'s hand while Victoria packed a backpack with supplies, running away on foot like criminals, which she realized they were. Mama. Marcus Jr. saw her first, breaking free from Richard's grip and running toward her. Richard's voice cut through the night air. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Denise. But as she held her son against her chest, feeling his heart beating fast with fear and relief, she realized something had changed. She wasn't the same woman who discovered her husband's betrayal a few weeks ago. She was a mother who'd learned to fight. The only thing hard about this, she said, standing up with Marcus Jr. in her arms, is explaining to our son why his father became a criminal. Jake emerged from the tree line behind Richard, weapon trained on the man who destroyed so many lives for money and ego. Richard Matthews, you're under arrest. The federal agents weren't far behind. What would you do if you had to choose between everything you thought you wanted and everything you knew was right? Drop a comment below and hit that subscribe button, because this story isn't over yet. With a gun pointed at her heart and sirens approaching, she realized the only way to save her son was to destroy the man she once loved completely. The hunting cabin's porch light created a circle of yellow in the mountain darkness. Inside that circle, 4 adults and 1 child played out the final scene of a marriage that had been built on lies from day one. Richard held the gun steady, pointed at Denise's chest while Marcus Jr. clung to her legs. Victoria stood behind him, no longer the polished socialite from the restaurant. Her expensive clothes were torn from the forest chase, her perfect hair wild with desperation. Federal agents. 5 minutes out, Jake said calmly, his own weapon trained on Richard. This is over, Matthews. Put the gun down. Nothing's over until I say it's over. Richard's voice carried the rage of a man watching his empire crumble. I built everything we have, Denise. Everything. And you destroyed it. You destroyed it yourself, she replied, keeping her voice steady for Marcus Jr.'s sake. I just stopped pretending it was real. The sirens were getting closer, echoing off the mountain walls like hunting hounds closing in. Richard's finger twitched on the trigger, and Denise saw the exact moment he made his decision. If I can't have my family, nobody can. But Victoria moved faster than anyone expected. Richard stopped. She threw herself between them just as Jake's shot rang out. The sound echoed through the forest like thunder, followed by silence, so complete it felt holy. When the federal agents reached the clearing, they found Richard on the ground, wounded but alive, while Victoria knelt beside him with her hands pressed to the bullet wound in his shoulder. He wasn't really going to shoot, Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. He couldn't accept that it was over. Agent Shin took charge of the scene while paramedics worked on Richard. But it was Victoria's next words that changed everything. I need to make a statement, she said, looking directly at Denise. About everything. The whole operation. Jake helped Denise and Marcus Jr. to his SUV while Victoria talked to the federal agents. Through the open car windows, they could hear fragments of her confession. Undercover for 18 months. Federal task force investigating money laundering. Evidence of fraud, bribery, and child endangerment. Denise felt the world shift again. Victoria wasn't just the other woman. She was a federal agent. Mama. Marcus Jr.'s voice was small against her chest. Are we going home now? Yes, baby. We're going home. But even as she said it, she realized they had no home to go back to. The mansion was a crime scene. Their old apartment had been given up. Everything they'd built their life around was gone. Jake seemed to read her thoughts. My place is a guest room, he said quietly, until you figure out what comes next. The offer hung in the night air between them. Professional help becoming something personal. 2 people who'd found each other in the middle of chaos, discovering that sometimes the best partnerships grow from the worst circumstances. Agent Chin approached the SUV with a folder thick with documents. "Mrs. Matthews, we'll need your full statement, but I want you to see this first." Inside the folder were bank records, recorded phone conversations, and photographs documenting Richard's crimes going back 3 years. But the last page made Denise's breath catch. A DNA test. Marcus Jr.'s paternity results. "Your husband wasn't his biological father," Agent Chin explained. "Never was. The man who lives in Birmingham, Alabama. Marcus Thompson. He's been looking for both of you for 8 years." The fours seemed to stop breathing. Marcus Jr.'s real father. Alive. Searching for them, while Richard had built lies to keep them apart. Richard falsified the original paternity test, Agent Chin continued. Paid off lab technicians, forged documents, even had Marcus Thompson arrested on false charges to keep him away from you during the pregnancy. Jake's hand found hers in the darkness. "Are you okay?" She wasn't sure. How could she be okay when her entire life had been revealed as an elaborate criminal conspiracy? But holding her son while surrounded by people who'd fought to save them both, she realized something. Okay was relative. "What happens now?" she asked. Agent Chin smiled. "Now Richard Matthews faces federal charges for money laundering, fraud, kidnapping, and about 12 other felonies. The evidence Victoria gathered while undercover should put him away for 20 to 30 years. And Victoria? Agent Williams did her job. She'll testify at trial, then probably disappear into a new assignment. Deep cover operations like this one take their toll." As they drove down the mountain toward Atlanta, Marcus Jr. fell asleep against his mother's shoulder. In the rearview mirror, Denise could see the flashing lights of the federal investigation, but ahead of them lay only darkness and possibility. Jake's voice was soft in the quiet car. "For what it's worth, I think you're the strongest person I've ever met." I didn't feel strong. Strength isn't about feeling strong. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you're terrified. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown Alabama number. "Ms. Denise, this is Marcus Thompson. The FBI gave your number. I've been looking for you and my son for 8 years. Can we talk?" The real father, the one who'd never stopped searching. Another piece of her son's story that had been stolen and hidden. She showed the message to Jake, who read it and nodded. "Complicated doesn't begin to cover it, does it?" "No," she agreed. "But maybe complicated is better than simple lies." As Atlanta's lights appeared in the distance, she realized that for the first time in years, she was driving toward truth instead of away from it. Have you ever discovered that your whole life was different than you thought it was? Sometimes the hardest part isn't learning the truth, it's deciding what to do with it. Let me know in the comments what you think Denise should do next. The DNA test results didn't just prove her son was hers. They revealed Richard had stolen the boy from his real father, a man Denise thought had abandoned them years ago. The federal building in downtown Atlanta felt like a courthouse for souls instead of bodies. In conference room 412, Denise sat across from Marcus Thompson, a man whose eyes were the exact same shade of brown as her son's. 8 years. That's how long Marcus Sr. had been searching for the woman he loved and the child he'd never met. 8 years of private investigators, false leads, and a legal system that told him he had no rights because he wasn't listed on the birth certificate. "I never left you," were his first words to her. "I want you to know that." Agent Chin sat between them with case files spread across the table like evidence of stolen time. Mr. Thompson was arrested the night before Marcus Jr. was born, charged with assault and battery, domestic violence, and stalking. All false charges, Marcus Sr. said, his voice tight with old pain. "I was in county jail when my son came into the world, and by the time I got out, you'd both disappeared." Denise studied his face, trying to reconcile this man with her memories of their relationship. Young love in Birmingham, passionate and intense. She'd been 19, working her way through nursing school. He'd been 21, a construction worker with dreams of starting his own company. "Richard told me you'd moved to California," she said. "He showed me court papers saying you'd signed away your parental rights." "Forged," Agent Chin confirmed. "All of it. Richard Matthews orchestrated your boyfriend's arrest, falsified legal documents, and used his family's money to make you disappear while Mr. Thompson was fighting false charges. The scope of Richard's deception kept expanding. It wasn't just marriage fraud or financial crimes. He'd literally stolen another man's family. Why? Denise asked. Why go through all that trouble? Marcos Senor ons virid. Because you were pregnant with my child and he wanted you both. Richard Matthews doesn't steal cars or jewelry. He steals lives. The conference room door opened, and Jake entered with Marcus Jr., who'd been playing video games in the children's area while the adults talked about custody and DNA and crimes that had shaped his whole existence. Mama. Marcus Jr. looked confused by the formal setting. Are we in trouble? No, baby. Come here. She pulled him onto her lap, acutely aware that Marcus Sr. was studying his son's face with the intensity of a man seeing a miracle. Marcus Jr., I want you to meet someone very special, Denise said, her voice carefully controlled. This is Marcus Thompson, your biological father. The 8-year-old looked from his mother to the stranger with his same eyes, same dimpled chin, same way of tilting his head when he was thinking. Like my real dad? He asked. The question hung in the air, like a challenge to everything they'd all believed about family and truth and what made someone a parent. Marcus Sr.'s voice was gentle. I'm the man who helped make you, son. But Richard Matthews raised you. And this lady, he gestured toward Jake, seems to care about both of you a whole lot. Jake had been quiet through most of the meeting, but now he stepped forward. Marcus Jr., remember how we talked about different kinds of families? How some people have moms and dads who are married, and others have parents who love them from different places. The boy nodded. Well, it looks like you're going to have the biggest family of all. Your mom, who loves you most in the world. Your biological father, who's been looking for you since before you were born. And maybe some other people who want to love you too. It was the most diplomatic way possible to explain that his life had been built on kidnapping and fraud, but that the adults around him were trying to turn crime into love. Agent Chun cleared her throat. For a legal standpoint, Mr. Thompson has full paternal rights. The false documents that terminated his parental status have been voided. Mrs. Matthews, excuse me, Ms. Denise, you retain full maternal custody. What about Richard? Marcus Jr. asked. The adults exchanged glances. How do you explain to a child that the man who raised him was a criminal who'd stolen him from his real father? Richard made some very bad choices, Denise said carefully. He's going to have to go away for a while to think about what he did wrong. Marcus Sr. knelt down to his son's eye level. I know this is confusing, buddy, but I want you to know something. I never stopped looking for you. Not for one single day. Were you sad? Marcus Jr. asked with the directness that only children possess. The saddest I've ever been. Are you happy now? Marcus Sr.'s smile transformed his face. The happiest I've ever been. Jake's phone buzzed with a text message. He read it and frowned. We need to go. Richard made bail. Agent Chun stood immediately. That's impossible. Federal charges, flight risk, family money, Jake said grimly. His father posted a $10 million bond. The conference room suddenly felt exposed. Richard was free, angry, and had nothing left to lose. Protective custody, Agent Chun decided. All of you, until trial. But Marcus Sr. shook his head. I've got a better idea. My construction company has a safe house in the mountains. Place I use for high-profile clients who need privacy. Nobody knows about it, except my most trusted people. Denise looked at Jake, then at Marcus Sr., then at her son who was watching all the adults with wide eyes. Together, she asked. Together, Marcus Sr. confirmed. All of us. Until Richard Matthews is back behind bars where he belongs. As they gathered their things to leave the federal building, Denise realized she was about to spend the next few days in a safe house with her son, his biological father, and the man she was falling in love with. If complicated had a definition, this was it. But as Marcus Jr. slipped his hand into Jake's on one side and looked curiously at Marcus Sr. on the other, she thought maybe complicated was just another word for family. What do you think makes someone a real parent? DNA, time, or love? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe because this story is about to get even more intense. Three men claimed the right to call themselves her son's father, but only one had earned it through 8 years of bedtime stories and scraped-knee kisses. The courthouse steps crawled with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning strikes against the morning sky. Inside, Denise sat between Jake and Marcus, her hands trembling as they waited for the judge to call their case. Her son, their son, sat in the witness room, probably scared out of his mind. Have you ever watched 3 adults fight over a child like he was property? Have you seen lawyers turn a little boy's love into evidence? Richard's arrest had made national news. Millionaire real estate developer charged with kidnapping, financial fraud. The headlines painted him as a monster, but the custody hearing was about more than his crimes. It was about who deserved to call themselves a father. Marcus shifted in his seat, his jaw tight. 8 years of missed birthdays weighed heavy on his shoulders. I should have fought harder, he whispered. Should have known Richard was lying about the restraining order. Jake's hand found Denise's knee. The boy knows who raised him. That matters. The courtroom doors opened, and Judge Patricia Williams walked in. She'd seen every kind of family drama, but this case was special. The media attention, the federal charges, the complexity of 3 father figures. It was precedent-setting territory. Your Honor, Richard's lawyer began, even though Richard himself sat in federal prison. My client's paternal rights were established through 8 years of marriage and legal adoption. With forged documents, the prosecutor interrupted. Mr. Matthews kidnapped this child through fraudulent marriage and identity theft. But the real moment came when they brought Tommy into the courtroom. 8 years old, wearing his favorite superhero shirt. He looked at the 3 men who wanted to claim him. Tommy, Judge Williams said gently, can you tell me who you think of as your dad? The boy's eyes moved between Marcus and Jake. Richard wasn't even there, still locked up, still fighting federal charges that would keep him away for decades. Marcus gave me my eyes, Tommy said, his voice small but clear. But Jake taught me how to see. He's the one who reads me stories and helps with homework. He's the one who came to my school play when I was scared. Marcus's face cracked, tears streaming down his cheeks. 8 years of stolen time. 8 years of missing his son's childhood. Marcus is my birth dad, Tommy continued, but Jake is my everyday dad. And Mom says family isn't just blood. It's who shows up. The judge nodded slowly. Custody cases involving 3 potential fathers were rare, but the child's wisdom was undeniable. If you've ever been in a room where a child's words changed everything, you know the power of innocence speaking truth. This court recognizes the unique circumstances of this case, Judge Williams announced. Primary custody goes to Denise Roberts, with Jake Morrison recognized as psychological parent with full parental rights. Marcus Thompson will have supervised visitation rights, with the goal of rebuilding the relationship stolen from him. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. 3 adults putting a child's needs first, something Richard had never learned to do. Outside the courthouse, Marcus pulled Jake aside. Thank you, he said, his voice breaking. Thank you for loving my son when I couldn't be there. Jake's response showed the man he really was. He's our son now. All of ours. Different ways, but all of ours. The reporters shouted questions. Cameras clicked, but inside their small circle, healing had begun. Tommy held both men's hands, his mother's arms around all of them. But Victoria appeared at the edge of the crowd, her face pale. We need to talk, she called out. Richard escaped federal custody this morning. He's coming for all of you. The celebration died in their throats. The legal battle was over, but the real war was just beginning. Drop a heart in the comments if you believe children should have a voice in custody decisions. Hit that notification bell because this story is about to get dangerous. A desperate millionaire with nothing left to lose makes the most dangerous enemy, especially when he blames you for destroying the empire he built on lies. Within hours, their lives became a movie they never wanted to star in. Federal marshals surrounded their house. Jake's old police contacts flooded their phones with warnings, and Tommy's school went into lockdown mode. He's not thinking straight, Victoria explained, pacing their living room like a caged animal. Prison broke something in him. The federal psyche eval says he's having a complete mental break. Have you ever felt hunted in your own city? Have you ever looked over your shoulder, wondering if today was the day your past caught up with you? Atlanta became a chessboard where every move carried life and death weight. Richard knew their routines, their favorite restaurants, their son's school schedule. 8 years of marriage had given him a roadmap to their destruction. Jake's phone buzzed constantly. His former police buddies feeding him intelligence. He's got money hidden offshore, Detective Morse reported. Hired some serious muscle. This isn't just revenge, Jake. It's war. The safe house felt like prison. Tommy played video games while 2 federal agents watched cartoons, but Denise could see the fear in her son's eyes. He'd been through too much for an 8-year-old. Why is Richard so mad at us? Tommy asked that night, curled up between Denise and Jake on the safe house couch. Some people can't handle losing, Jake said carefully. And some people think they own things that were never really theirs. The first attempt came at the grocery store. Denise was buying milk when she spotted the black sedan following her through the parking lot. Her nursing training kicked in. Stay calm, assess the situation, call for help. But her mother's instinct screamed louder, run. Jake's driving skills from his police days saved them that time, but they all knew it wouldn't be the last. He's playing with us, Jake said as they changed safe houses for the 3rd time. Cat and mouse. Wants a scare before he makes his real move. Marcus had joined their protection detail, his guilt driving him to help however he could. I should have protected him years ago, he kept saying. Should have fought harder when Richard had me arrested. The federal agents were good, but Richard was desperate. Desperate men with unlimited money could buy anything. Information, weapons, loyalty. He'd already proven he could forge documents and manipulate systems. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Chun, Tommy's pediatrician, called with news that made everyone's blood freeze. Tommy's scheduled for emergency surgery tomorrow, she said, her voice shaking. Appendicitis. But here's the thing. Someone called pretending to be his father, asking about his medical schedule. The voice didn't sound like Jake. Denise felt the world tilt. Richard knows Tommy will be in the hospital. It gets worse, Dr. Chin continued. The caller asked which room he'd be in, what time his surgery was scheduled, how long recovery would take. He's planning something. Jake was already reaching for his gun. We're not doing this. We'll find another hospital, another surgeon. No, Denise said, her voice steel. Tommy needs that surgery, and I won't let Richard turn my son's medical emergency into his final game. If you've ever had to choose between safety and doing what's right for your child, you know there's really no choice at all. The hospital became their battleground. Federal agents disguised as orderlies. Jake's police friends working security. Marcus stationed in the waiting room. But they all knew Richard had advantages, money, desperation, and nothing left to lose. At 11:47 p.m., as Tommy was being prepped for surgery, Jake's phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. Stop running. Come to the children's wing alone, or I start hurting people you love. You have 13 minutes. But Denise was already moving. 13 minutes was enough time to end this war, one way or another. She kissed Tommy's forehead as they wheeled him toward the operating room. Mommy will be right here when you wake up, she promised. What she didn't tell him was that she might have to go through Richard Matthews to keep that promise. Comment below if you've ever had to be braver than you felt for someone you love. This story is about to reach its breaking point. In a children's hospital where she once discovered betrayal, Denise would either save her family or lose everything to the man who'd already stolen 8 years of her life. The children's wing at midnight felt like a ghost town. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting long shadows down empty hallways where cartoon characters on the walls smiled at nobody. Somewhere behind those doors, surgeons were working to save Tommy's appendix, while his mother prepared to face the devil who destroyed their family. Richard waited in the family conference room, still wearing his expensive suit despite 3 days on the run. Federal prison had aged him, gray streaks in his hair, hollow circles under his eyes, the desperate look of a man who'd lost everything that mattered to his ego. You came alone, he said, not turning around. Smart woman. Always were too smart for your own good. Let me guess, Denise said. her voice steady despite the gun in his hand. "This is where you tell me it's all my fault, where you blame me for discovering who you really were. Have you ever stared down someone who once controlled your entire world? Have you ever felt the moment when fear transforms into pure fury? I gave you everything," Richard snarled, finally facing her. "Mansion, money, security. All you had to do was play the part. Be the grateful wife, raise the boy, keep your mouth shut. You gave me lies wrapped in expensive paper. I gave you a life better than anything you deserved. Small-town nurse, knocked up by some loser who ran off. I rescued you from that pathetic existence." The words were designed to hurt, to make her feel small again. But Denise had learned something in the past few months. The opinions of broken men couldn't break whole women. "You didn't rescue me, Richard. You imprisoned me. There's a difference." His laugh was bitter, empty. "And now look at you, playing house with some ex-cop, fighting over custody with the real father. You think that's better than what I offered? It's real. That's what makes it better." Jake's voice came through her earpiece. "Federal agents had wired her before she came up. 2 minutes until we move in, Denise. Keep him talking." But Richard was done talking. 8 years of careful planning, destroyed by one woman's refusal to stay blind. His empire crumbling, his reputation in ruins, his freedom gone, all because she wouldn't accept the beautiful lie he'd built. "You destroyed my life," he whispered, raising the gun. "Destroyed everything I worked for. No, Richard, you destroyed your own life. I just refused to go down with it." The hospital room door behind him opened, and Tommy appeared in his surgical gown, still groggy from anesthesia, but awake. The surgery had finished early, and somehow he'd wandered into the middle of his mother's nightmare. "Mom," Tommy said, confused and scared. Richard's attention shifted for half a second, but that was all Jake needed. He'd come through the window, 3 stories up, using maintenance ladders and pure determination to reach them. The tackle sent Richard crashing into the conference table, the gun skittering across the floor. But Richard wasn't finished fighting. 8 years of gym memberships and personal trainers versus Jake's police training and protective rage. Federal agents flooded the room as the 2 men fought, but it was Tommy's voice that ended it. "Stop hurting my family." The little boy's cry broke something in Richard. He looked at the child he'd tried to steal, the woman he'd tried to control, the man who'd earned what he'd never deserved. For just a moment, his mask slipped completely. "I loved you," he said to Denise, and for the first time in years, it might have been true. "I loved you both." "Love doesn't steal," Denise replied as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't threaten. What you did wasn't love, Richard. It was ownership." As they led him away, Richard's last words were barely a whisper. "You'll never be happy without me." But watching Jake comfort Tommy while federal agents secured the scene, Denise already knew Richard was wrong about that too. The nightmare was over. The healing could finally begin. If you've ever had to face down someone who tried to own you instead of love you, share this story. Hit that like button if you believe real love sets people free instead of locking them up. She'd spent 8 years married to a lie, so when a real man offered her truth, her answer came from a heart that finally knew the difference. 6 months after Richard's final arrest, life had settled into something Denise had never experienced before: peace. Real peace, not the expensive, quiet money could buy, but the deep calm that comes from living without fear. Tommy's recovery had been complete, physically and emotionally. The therapy sessions helped him understand that none of the adult drama was his fault, and gradually, the nightmares stopped. Marcus visited every other weekend, building a relationship with his son that felt natural instead of forced. But it was Jake who had proven himself in the small moments. Jake, who knew Tommy liked his sandwiches cut diagonally, who remembered that Denise took her coffee black on tough days and with cream when she was happy. Jake, who'd never asked her to be anything other than exactly who she was. The proposal came on an ordinary Tuesday morning in Tommy's hospital room. Not the children's wing, where their nightmare had ended, but the regular pediatric ward where he was getting his final checkup. "All clear," Dr. Chin announced, smiling at Tommy. No more surgery scares for you, young man. Have you ever noticed how the best moments in life happen when you're not expecting them? How love shows up in hospital rooms and grocery store aisles instead of fancy restaurants. Jake was helping Tommy tie his shoes when he pulled out the small velvet box. Nothing flashy, nothing designed to impress other people. Just a simple ring that caught the morning light streaming through the hospital window. "Denise," he said, his voice steady but his hands shaking slightly. "I've got something to ask you. But first, I need to ask your son." Tommy's eyes went wide as Jake turned to him. "Tommy, would it be okay with you if I asked your mom to marry me? If I became your stepdad officially?" The 8-year-old's grin could have powered the entire hospital. "Are you kidding?" "Yes. Can I call you Dad for real then?" "You already do, buddy. This would just make it legal." Jake turned back to Denise, dropping to one knee right there on the hospital floor. "I'm not asking you to marry me because you need rescuing. You've proven you can save yourself. I'm asking because life is better when we're together. Because your son deserves to see what real love looks like. Because I want to build something true with you." The ring was perfect, not because it was expensive, but because it was chosen by a man who actually knew her. Simple, elegant, real. "Will you marry us?" Jake asked, including Tommy in the question. "Because I'm not just asking for your heart. I'm asking to be part of your family." If you've ever been asked a question where your whole future hung in the balance, you know how time can stop while your heart catches up with your head. "Yes," Denise said, her voice strong and sure. "Yes to all of it. Yes to truth. Yes to partnership. Yes to building something real." The kiss that followed tasted like promises kept and futures built on solid ground. Tommy cheered. Dr. Chun wiped away tears, and somewhere in federal prison, Richard Matthews was probably wondering how he'd lost something so precious. But that didn't matter anymore. The past was past, and the future belonged to people brave enough to choose love over fear. Marcus arrived an hour later, bringing flowers and his blessing. "I'm happy for all of you," he said, and meant it. Tommy's lucky to have so many people who love him. The engagement party that weekend was small, just family and friends who'd supported them through the nightmare. No expensive catering or designer decorations, just people who mattered celebrating something real. Victoria stopped by, her federal agent duties finally complete. "I'm glad it worked out," she said, hugging Denise goodbye. "You deserved a happy ending." "It's not an ending," Denise replied, watching Jake and Tommy throw a football in the backyard. "It's a beginning. Share this if you believe everyone deserves a love that celebrates who they are instead of trying to change them." Comment below about a time when someone showed you what real love looked like. The woman who once believed she couldn't have children stood in her own backyard, watching her husband push their toddler on the swing set while their teenage son coached from the sidelines. 3 years later, the nightmare felt like someone else's life. Denise Matthews, no, Denise Morrison now, stood at her kitchen window, watching her family play in the Atlanta sunshine. Their house wasn't a mansion, but it was filled with laughter and arguments and the beautiful chaos of real family life. Jake pushed 2-year-old Emma higher on the swing, while 11-year-old Tommy spotted for safety. The little girl had Jake's eyes and Denise's stubborn streak, and she ruled their household with the iron fist of a toddler who knew she was loved. "Higher, Daddy," Emma squealed, her dark curls flying in the wind. "That's high enough, baby girl," Jake laughed, slowing the swing. "We don't want to launch you into orbit." Have you ever watched your children play and realized that everything you went through was worth it for this moment? Have you ever felt your heart so full it might burst from gratitude? Marcus arrived for his weekly visit, carrying Emma's favorite picture book and a football for Tommy. The relationship between the three adults had evolved into something none of them expected. Genuine friendship built on shared love for the children. "How's the new job?" Jake asked, tossing Marcus a beer as they settled on the back porch. "Good. Feels right, you know. Teaching kids, coaching football, using my second chance to help other people get theirs." Marcus had turned his life around after the custody battle, becoming a high school counselor and coach. He'd learned that being a father wasn't just about DNA. It was about showing up consistently and with love. The doorbell rang, and Denise answered to find a reporter, one of the many who still called occasionally, wanting to follow up on the Atlanta custody case that had made national headlines. "Mrs. Morrison, how do you feel about Richard Matthews being denied parole again?" Denise considered the question. Richard had tried 3 times now to get early release, and 3 times the parole board had rejected his appeals. His lawyers claimed he was a changed man, but the federal prosecutors disagreed. "I don't think about Richard Matthews anymore," Denise said honestly. "My energy goes to my family, my work, and building the life we want. The past is the past." It was true. The woman who once jumped at every unexpected phone call now slept peacefully next to a man who'd never given her reason to doubt his word. The woman who once believed she was lucky to be chosen had learned she was worthy of being loved. That evening, after Emma was asleep and Tommy was finishing homework, Denise and Jake sat on their front porch swing. The same swing where Jake had proposed a second time, this one planned and perfect and witnessed by both their children. "Any regrets?" Jake asked, pulling her close. "About what?" "About how we got here. The messy path, the public drama, all of it." Denise considered the question seriously. 8 years with Richard had taught her to think before speaking, to weigh her words carefully. But 3 years with Jake had taught her that honesty was always the right choice. "I regret that Tommy had to go through it," she said finally. "I regret that Marcus lost 8 years with his son. But do I regret leaving Richard? Do I regret finding you? Never. Even though it was complicated, even though people still whisper when you walk by. Let them whisper. They're looking at a woman who refused to settle for less than she deserved. If that makes them uncomfortable, that's their problem." Jake's kiss tasted like contentment and possibility. 3 years of marriage had taught them both that love wasn't just a feeling. It was a choice, made new every day. The phone buzzed with a text from Victoria, now working in the FBI's white-collar crime division. Saw the parole denial on the news. "How are you holding up?" "Living my best life," Denise texted back. "How about you?" "Same. Bad guys in jail, good guys happy." Perfect ending. But it wasn't an ending, really. It was continuation of growth, of healing, of choosing to build something beautiful from the wreckage of betrayal. Tommy appeared in the doorway, 11 years old now, and showing signs of the man he'd become. "Mom, I'm working on this essay about heroes for school. Can I interview you?" "Me? Why me?" "Because you saved us. All of us. Even Marcus says so." Looking at her son, their son, Denise felt the truth of what she'd learned settle into her bones once more. Heroes weren't people who never fell down. Heroes were people who got back up, dusted themselves off, and built something better from the pieces. "Sure, baby. What do you want to know?" As they settled into the kitchen for the interview, Jake bouncing Emma on his knee while she babbled her toddler version of the story, Denise realized she'd finally learned the most important lesson of all. The right love doesn't ask you to be less than you are. It celebrates everything you've always been. If this story reminded you that you deserve authentic love, that you're worthy of truth instead of beautiful lies, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a heart in the comments for everyone who's ever had to choose between comfort and authenticity. And remember, the person who's meant to love you will never make you question whether you deserve it. Subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to settle for less than they deserved. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing that could happen to you.